All right, guys, we are live once again, and they just started. Let me pull this on the screen.
And I know that the Wilson family appreciates the swiftness of the justice that you've given Mo. Now, I'm not going to be up here long, but I put this picture up here for a reason. If you could read this lengthy transcript that's been going on for 3 weeks, we probably said the defendant, Kaitlin Armstrong, 1,000 times. I want today to be about Mo Wilson. I want to talk about Mo Wilson today. I don't want to talk about Kaitlin Armstrong anymore. I feel like you guys have done your job and you have done it diligently. So I want to refocus on Mo. Looking at ballistics and DNA and cell phone data and Jeep data and the black Jeep, you get so bogged down that we lose the reason we're here. She's a beautiful person. And I even learned something about her and listening to Karen yesterday. I was so moved by her words that somehow in her daughter's soul, she knew she wasn't going to be here long. So she lived life to the fullest. And I think I heard Karen ask you, some of you guys are parents, know about the parents' love. It oozed from her yesterday, as well as Eric. That's the parents' love. And to be honest with you, I felt Mr. Armstrong's love for his daughter. I felt it. But the difference is, his daughter is still sitting right there. She's not in a good situation, but she's still sitting right there. But Eric and Karen, their daughter is gone. I want you to know I was not being callous when I called her a prodigy. In trial prep, talking to all those cyclist people that you heard, Alan and Lance, Colin and people like that, they're the one that convinced me she's a prodigy. I was wondering how she got second place in one race. And Cass cleared it up for me. She had a flat. All kind of things happened. I'm thinking, no wonder. But that's how good she was. I don't know much about gravel racing, but I'd be willing to bet that 25 is not your prime. I think she wasn't there yet. In talking to Colin Strickland one day, and I think gravel racing is a sport where the men finish a little bit ahead of the women. I think he told me she even beat him one day. And you heard him. He was a pretty good. He was a professional. Made a little money at it. She beat some of the men. That's how good she was. So today, I want to make it about her. I want to make it about what she deserves.
I expect him to get
We
into
can have
the family
passion
stuff.
for Mr. Armstrong. We can even have passion for the defendant. We can certainly have passion for Eric and Karen and Matt.
Yeah.
Matt told you he was going through a depression. His sister helped pull him out of it. I come to this thing for 30 years and I do my job and I try to do it well, no matter which side of the table I'm on. Rarely am I moved like I was when Eric said, when me and Karen are gone, Matt's not going to have anybody. It ripped through my soul. Ripped through my soul when he said it. So when you go back there to deliberate, I don't want you to think about Kaitlin Armstrong. They'll get up as they should and say some things about her, and say some things to maybe ask you to give her some kind of mercy or a second chance, or don't take a whole life, whatever. I'm okay with you considering all that. I'm okay with you listening actively like you've done for the past 3 weeks. But when you get up and walk out that door, I want you to think about Moriah Wilson. Look at that picture, it's on your screen, and put it in your brains before you leave here. Think about how many times we've heard Kaitlin Armstrong, Colin Strickland. And almost every time we heard Mo's name was, did you kill Mo Wilson? Did you kill Mo Wilson? I'm here to talk about her life, not her death. She accomplished a lifetime of achievements in 25 years. And then she was taken from us way too soon. Taken from Eric and Karen and Matt way too soon. Just a few more words before I concede my time. My new best friend, fellow Longhorn Cash.
Hook 'em.
Told me, I'm gonna call her Kaitlin. I don't care. I'm still gonna call her Kaitlin. So I'm gonna call her Kaitlin today too. Kaitlin Cash. Just like what she said, she went back to that apartment to not let it get control over her. She's a bigger person than me. I don't know if I could do it. I just don't know if I could go back in that space every day like that. It's too tragic. It's very emotional when she talked about that washer and dryer, because we all seen that bullet hole in that washer and dryer, stackable washer and dryer. And when she said they replaced the tile, I had the vision of that hole in the floor on that tile. I just don't know if I could go back there. Now, I do understand that the defendant is not on trial for doing anything but the murder of Mo Wilson. But Kaitlin Cash said for 555 days, 16 months, she's lived in terror and in fear. And she how many pictures have you all seen of those little wooden stairs up there? And she said every time she get to those stairs, she got to fight herself to get up those stairs. Wherever you are back there, you think about those 16 months she suffered. You put a plus sign on whatever number you got. I'm asking you to do that for Cash and for Mo Wilson. And I do understand how everybody has suffered. And a few other things, without rehashing all that evidence we heard. Think about a few things. Although she was free to leave and free to go over there, she put her sister in harm's way. By stealing her passport. It's a federal offense. What if they try to conclude that her sister gave her passport? You just never know. She put everybody at risk. She was selfish. Utterly selfish. Think about that. The plastic surgery, all those things she did to evade the police. Yeah. And for me, the video of her trying to escape was mind-boggling. I've never seen anything like it in my life. She ran a whole mile, partially cuffed, one free hand. That's probably, they have the leg restraints in both hands. As you know, she got one hand out. That's probably why she couldn't raise the other hand up to get over the fence.
Yeah, if I'm on the jury, that's a huge
Whole
factor.
mile in leg restraints. 19 days before this trial. That says a lot about who she is. Not her demeanor over there. You can read too much into people's demeanor. Some people may be sitting there silent. Doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean they don't care. It don't mean they don't have remorse. It could be fear. It could be anything. So I'm not asking you to put any value on how she's looking sitting there, because that's not fair to her. I'm asking you to look at her actions, what she did to Mo, and the fact that she tried to escape, the fact that she left the country. And like I told you in closing, and like they said in the opening, a shrinking violet doesn't stand over a person and give them one more in the heart for good measure. That's cold. That is cold. And think about the turmoil that she went through. We don't know for sure, but Dr. DeRucci told you it's a defensive wound. You can conclude that she's seen this coming and she tried to protect herself or tried to cover herself. We don't know which it went in. We don't know which end it went in, but we do know it's a defensive wound. So for a flash of a second, she saw it coming and tried to protect herself. And her friend had to pop on her chest for 10 minutes, not knowing she was already dead, and live with the horror of having to go to her home. Home is a safe place. Have a bad day at work. I want to go home, relax, get the remote control, get something to drink, get some food, just relax, wait for the kids to come home from school, or whatever your situation is. Home is a safe place you go. Having a bad day at work. Go to the mall, having a bad day, it's crowded during Christmas shopping or whatever. I can't wait to get home. Home for her is living hell. Home is a place where she watched her best friend. And lastly, because I asked you to put 16 months on top of whatever your number is, I want to leave you one final word about Kaitlin. And I'm not talking about Armstrong. I'm talking about Cash. If you remember correctly, thank you, Anna.
Oh,
On May 11th,
we've got a little bit of
2022.
time left.
Prior to 9:17 p.m. And I was quite moved because I didn't know this until yesterday. I found out the same day you did. Now I'm getting teased for getting emotional in court because that's not my style. When she sent her mom a picture of them saying, "I will protect your daughter." Didn't know that. I didn't know it. Those are the things I want you to think about, because that's Mo Wilson's life, not someone else. I appreciate you. I appreciate your quickness. I appreciate your speed. And on behalf of the state and Travis County DA, I'd like to thank you. And we will accept whatever decision you come back with. Thank you.
I think that the family stuff is going to be in the rebuttal. I think they're going to end with that because that's the most impactful stuff. That's what they want the jury to really sit with last. So, you know, I see in the chat folks are frustrated that they spent so much time talking about, you know, her bicycling career and that, and, you know, talking about the impact on Cash and others. But I think that my guess is that on rebuttal, that's where we're going to hear about, like, her mom said this, her mom talked about, you know, how she was as a baby, and her brother talked about how the greatest tragedy is the fact that she's never going to get married. She's never going to have kids. You know, he lost his sister now, and they were like best friends. And, you know, yeah. So anyway, so I expect that to be a very emotional rebuttal after the defense. After yesterday's closing by the defense and the tone that they chose to use for that, I don't I don't know what to expect from this. But, you know, hey, we'll see. So, sidebar, I don't know what this is about, but for folks asking questions in the chat, also, I saved some questions here. Brittany Chanel, this isn't a death penalty case, right? Yeah, it's not. It's up to 99 years. Minimum is 5 years, I think. 99 is the max. If I'm on the jury, I'm giving her 99 years. I just, this is so egregious. And the fact that she fled, the fact that she took her sister's passport and fled is just, and the fact that she even tried to escape from jail before the trial happened. It speaks, I mean, a lot of times what they're looking for in these sentencing hearings is, you know, do they seem like they are, you know, in some way taking responsibility for what they've done? And her multiple escape attempts, to me, would be evidence of, like, no, she has zero intention for taking any responsibility for any of this. And so, you know, that would be a huge factor for me if I'm on the jury. And to clarify also, so this is a closing. So for the sentencing, normally what happens here is they've got an opening statement, they've got witnesses that they put on, and then they've got closing arguments. It's similar to a trial, but it's just, the question is not whether or not she's guilty, it's how much time is she going to be spending in prison now. And so that's you know, that's why they will bifurcate it like that. And I'm gonna try your name. I'm not sure if I'll get it right, but I think Veilbaum Wegenseife, I think. I was tipped off by the fact that you're not from the US. So hopefully I pronounced that right. Wait, so the jury decides the length of the sentence as well. I'm not from the USA, so I am kind of clueless. So she chose to have the jury do the sentencing. It's not often. I don't know. Actually, I don't know how often. Maybe I know that McKinley's in the chat. She said she couldn't join us on screen today, but she's in the chat here. So maybe she can answer as to, like, how often, like, what the split is when sentencing is either, you know, by a jury or by a judge. I would usually think that it's more common for the judge to do it, but McKinley did say yesterday on our either the closing argument stream or the verdict stream that this particular judge is really tough. So, you know, if she had a case in front of her, you know, and the verdict was guilty, she would totally want the jury to also be the ones doing the sentencing, because she's a really tough judge. Yeah. So I hope we answered all of the questions here. No swimsuits, please. Please don't talk about swimsuits.
All of you did very hard work. Everyone in this room has done hard work. I don't just mean thinking of emotions and feelings, not just the last 3 weeks, but for the last 16 months. I won't have that much to say to you. I will share some of my experience, observations for what it's worth. For 15 years, I've practiced law as a prosecutor at that table, as a judge, as a defense attorney. You did heavy lifting and work trying to assess guilt or innocence. And That's a difficult job, but it has some real clear-cut rules. There's a reason why the instructions are so long. Punishment is a lot less clear-cut. It's a balance of things: retribution, deterrence, accountability, rehabilitation. How do you balance all of those considerations in a single number? No less than 5 years, no more than 99 years, or life, a fine up to $10,000. We, the defense, we have no recommendation for an appropriate sentence. That is your decision alone. Two families are devastated and grieving in very different ways. Kaitlin has no prior criminal history. She has no rap sheet. There's nothing to contextualize Kaitlin for your determination of her sentence. This case is unique. It's unique for this courthouse. It's unique for our community. And the pain that's in this room yesterday, today, is palpable, and it will continue. There are a lot of emotions. How do you take account of all of that? What's fair? And can we ever forgive? Forgiveness doesn't suspend judgment. It doesn't mean not holding people accountable. It doesn't mean ignoring injustices or forgetting the past. Forgiveness allows only for a possibility of atonement. And maybe redemption, which has to be earned. And there is a tug of war in our criminal justice system between retribution and redemption. Those are both principles undergirding our system of law. But just like in this case and in the decision that you will make today, most sentences are not for life without the possibility of parole. The fact that there is an end date to a sentence is an implicit acknowledgement that as a society, we at least see a possibility of redemption. Because growth can't happen without the necessary ingredients of redemption and forgiveness and self-forgiveness. If we're not allowed at least the opportunity to atone for our sins, then we cannot grow as a society. The reason we consider forgiving isn't to release the offender. It's not to give a gift to some other person. It's to release ourselves as well. The Reverend J.C. Austin said about forgiveness, we do not do it to let perpetrators off the hook. We do it to preserve our own humanity. Forgiveness and redemption doesn't mean giving up on moral judgment or excusing crimes. It means setting ourselves free of our human desire for vengeance or revenge. The author Bell Hooks asked, how do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed? Redemption is not a gift for the offender. Redemption is for all parties and the community itself to be restored to whatever degree of wellness and wholeness is possible. Redemption seeks and demands accountability from the wrongdoer, but ultimately it is a type of healing for everyone involved. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Thank you for your service.
Okay, here's the rebuttal. Now we're going to hear about the family, I think. He's going to really bring it in home.
During jury selection, way back when we first talked about this case, we talked a little bit about punishment. And we talked a little bit about this huge, big range that the state of Texas has said that a jury should have to consider on murder cases. You've heard that range, 5 to 99 years or life in prison. It also comes with a $10,000 fine. I do want to say this with regard to the fine. The fine doesn't go to the family. So don't feel that you need to struggle or contort yourself over how much of a fine and whether or not. If you want to do it, great. If you don't, it's not going to really matter. I did discuss with you guys during jury selection that this punishment range contrasts and expands based on the facts of the case. And that's, I think, how the state expects it to be used. That a segment of the community, that's you guys, should evaluate all the facts and all the circumstances that you've heard up to now, and that you decide whether this range should be shortened or expanded. That you guys will decide what's appropriate. I know this is a difficult situation, and I don't think any of you have ever been in a situation or probably really equipped to make a decision like this. And I heard what Mr. Kofer said, and you know what, I may agree a lot with a lot of what he said. But one thing that I do want you to think about and to factor into here is that accountability for your actions are just as important as redemption and forgiveness. And I submit to you that without accountability, there cannot be redemption and forgiveness.
Yep.
And that may be hard, but that's simply something that I'd ask you to consider. Because ultimately, I want you to think about some things. This person here, the defendant, is an adult when this event happened. Sophisticated, well-educated adult. College graduate, worked in the financial mortgage business, sought out by friends and family for her knowledge and expertise in financial matters. World traveler. Okay. So this person, this sophisticated person, when made the decision to embark and go down this path that has brought all of us here together, is not a person without experience and thoughtfulness, that certainly a person that would have realized what she was doing. Okay. This was a person that had certainly that day a long time to think about the consequences. We've seen the evidence. She drove around that neighborhood for over an hour. She parked at the entrance of the alley, turned off her Jeep for at least half an hour before the murder. Turned it back on a few minutes later. This is a person who had time to think and meditate and calculate about her actions and certainly the consequences of her actions. She then, after committing this murder, thought about, planned out, and acted out how to get away with it, how to avoid the consequences. And you heard how she did that. She stole her sister's passport. She used her sister's name. She flew to Costa Rica. You heard how she acted and behaved in Costa Rica. All while she left certainly the family and friends of Moriah Wilson to deal with the consequences of, again, her actions. Again, this is not a teenager. This is not a spontaneous act. This is somebody, a sophisticated person, a person with the capacity to think and understand and calculate what their actions are. And again, just 3 weeks before trial, she again calculates, thinks about how to act, takes a chance, tries to avoid facing justice, tries to avoid the community listening and hearing to the facts of the case. That's just 3 weeks before trial. Again, accountability. Okay. But accountability needs to be factored in with all of those things. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant certainly damaged the community by her actions. Just like when any life is lost needlessly, the community suffers. And here, certainly that happened, the loss of a young, talented person taken away, really for no reason. The defendant damaged the friends of Moriah Wilson, took her away from their life. Okay? And certainly it caused, as we saw, some of those friends to have a ongoing and hopefully not a lifelong trauma because of what the defendant did, because of the defendant's actions, because of the defendant's calculations. And you've heard Mr. Jones talk to you about it, and you've heard the evidence. I really don't need to go into it, but think about that 10 minutes of being subjected to that in your own bathroom. But one thing that jumped out to me is when Mr. Salinas, a young man who was the officer first on the scene, was asked to talk about it. Some of you may remember. You saw his reaction when I asked him to tell you about it. He was a professional, let alone the homeowner, the friend. She certainly damaged, devastated the family of Moriah Wilson. Okay, and they're probably going to be going through that for the rest of their lives. And we just saw what that looks like for about, half an hour. They have to live with that for the rest of their lives. Defendant's calculations, defendant's decisions, her choice. And it struck me also that she also damaged her own family. You saw her father, you saw her sister, people loved her, supported her. And again, by her own actions, by her calculations, threw that aside, threw it into the wind. Okay? This is a person who made, again, not a snap decision. This was not a momentary action. This was somebody who thought and had time to calculate and meditate about what she was about to do. And all of this is because of her actions, because of her thoughts and calculations. And ultimately, that calculation, ladies and gentlemen, really comes down to an age-old, beginning of time motive, right? So, talking about jealousy here, right? This is what this is all about. And she had to make a calculation with that solid financial mind that she has. And I think that somebody, again, in her position, an adult, a sophisticated adult with world travel experiences, with all kinds of life experiences, we would hope that they could deal with something like jealousy, right? There's an appropriate way to deal with that, ladies and gentlemen. And in this situation, the appropriate way was most likely, I'm severing my relationship with Colin Strickland.
Yeah, I would
But if
agree.
she did that, we know what
Most people do.
No longer am I with Colin Strickland, but what about all the financial and ties and ties to his community, the cycling community, and all that? All of those things come with severing my relationship with Colin Strickland. What's the calculation then, right? Do I lose all of that? Or do I make a cold, hard decision? Right? Decisions made, I'm going to put it in action. That's what she did. And now she's here, and it's time for accountability. Taking all of that into account, taking into account Moriah Wilson, I think that she deserves that you begin your calculation. It's hard calculation, and I understand. But I think that you should begin your calculation at a minimum of 40 years in prison. And that you go forward from there and decide what is appropriate as a solution to this situation. Thank you.
You've been retired
All right. How much more are we going to see before they take the cameras away? Let me do a poll. I want to know what you guys would think. Okay. We'll do some time brackets. All right. Okay, we've got a poll up. How many years would you give Kaitlin in prison? So there are bracketed options, 0 to 10, 10 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 99, which maybe it's an unfair way of making the poll because the the brackets get bigger. Actually, so yeah, one of them is a bracket of 10 years. Anyway, I just wanted to know, you know, what people are thinking for this. For me personally, this would be basically max, because I just, uh yes, this is our first offense, but I mean, like he said, there was so much time for her to decide what to do. She could have followed Mo all day, and then at the end of the day been like, you know what, I'm going home. I'm pulling myself out of this situation. Um, but she didn't. She tracked her down all day. Then she fled once to Costa Rica. She tried to get out of jail by fleeing that as well. There's just so much here that really makes this whole thing very, very culpable. So yeah, death penalty is not on the table though for this. It's up to 99 years. So anyhow, let me get some questions here. So this was an interesting point in the defense closing for sentencing, because he's talking about forgiveness, he's talking about that kind of stuff, and it sounds like he's saying that she is somehow admitting that she did it or something like that. But he's not making any kind of admissions. What he's doing is he's working with what the jury has decided. That's the conclusion that they have made, which is that they think that she is guilty unanimously. That's what had to happen, right? And so based on that conclusion, he knows that what they are thinking is they are very upset with her for killing another human being. So, with that, I mean, he's got to work off of what the jury is thinking, not necessarily what he is saying happened. If that makes any sense. But I can understand how it sounds like he's saying, he's saying that she did it. I mean, because if you think about it, they're not going to listen to anything that he has to say if he continues to maintain she didn't do it, she didn't do it, she didn't do it. When that's not the question here. That the question here is how long. Jen Shaw Hader, how old is the defendant? I think she's in her 30s, maybe like right around 30, somewhere around there. I think someone in the chat said 29. Let me see if there are any other questions here. But yeah, I think in terms of like, looking at the looking at the, I don't know about the quality. I guess the quality of the closings here. I could have gone for more from the first prosecution portion, talking more about the fact that she'll never be a wife, she'll never be a mother, she'll never have an opportunity to see the life stages that so many of us get to reach, and how those are, maybe those are things that she absolutely wanted. So there's that kind of thing, talking about how she'll never get to see her brother's life milestones as well, like that kind of thing. I think the defense should have done more to sort of frame it back to Kaitlin being a human being as well, maybe making mistakes and being you know talking about how, it's one thing to be angry or to be I don't know, something along the lines of being like, he did talk about forgiveness, he talked about that kind of thing, but on rebuttal, I completely agreed with what Gonzalez said, which was that he was like, look, you can have forgiveness, but forgiveness comes after contrition, right? It comes after someone has taken responsibility for it. And there's nothing in this case that suggests that she has taken responsibility for any of it, even leading up to the trial, just weeks before the trial. At that point, you would think that she would come to grips with the reality of her situation and be responsible. Like that's the thing. So anyway, yeah, I mean, Ryan G, it does seem like she has no remorse. There hasn't been any evidence here that she's shown any remorse. And it doesn't help that she's been emotionless. Granted, I don't like relying on that too much because there are so many reasons why someone could be emotionless. Maybe she's just terrified. Maybe she's someone who doesn't show emotion on her face very often. There are a lot of people that are like that, and especially when so many people are studying what it is that you're doing and the expressions that you're making. I can totally envision someone being like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to try to be as blank as possible. Totally. But, people also the jury also has a right they also have a right to examine all of that and to take that into consideration. So yeah, anyway, interesting closing arguments for it. I think that what I'm going to do is, well, let me close out the poll first, because I forgot to do that the other day when we were doing, or yesterday when we did the closing arguments. It was like 93% said guilty, which wasn't a huge surprise to me. But let's see, the results of the poll should be pulling up now in a minute. But most people said, I think, here we go. Okay. Yeah. 50% said 60 to 99 years. 28% said that they would want her to be in prison for 40 to 60 years. 16% said 10 to 40, 4% 0 to 10. It should have been 5 to 10 anyway, because it's the minimum. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, a lot of folks want her to be in prison for a very long time. And I personally agree with that. It's just such a terrible case. Bree M, is there a specific reason she didn't take the stand? Well, because I mean, first off, it is her right to invoke the Fifth Amendment. She has a right not to self-incriminate. Taking the stand is a very, very risky thing. Generally speaking, unless the defense has done some sort of like jury polling, where they've done some work with like fake jurors, hypothetical jurors, to see what they think about the defendant testifying or not testifying. An example of this was the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where they actually used some mock juries for that to see what they thought in a potential trial, if he testified versus if he didn't. And overwhelmingly, they said that in Wisconsin, they said that they wanted him to testify. They absolutely, it was very unfavorable to him if he did not testify. So that was one of the reasons why they ended up having Kyle testify. But the other big reason is because that was a self-defense case. And so anytime you have an element of the defense kind of requires getting the take from the defense, it requires some kind of explanation from the defendant, then you're in a situation where they probably should testify. But other than that, here Kaitlin was not alleging self-defense. She wasn't alleging, I mean, it was the evidence was not so much on what was inside her brain at the time that it happened. I mean, although we were all very interested in what that was, but the legal question wasn't so much about that. It was the evidence that was coming in was focused on a lot of the forensics, the digital forensics, the DNA forensics, the ballistics, all of that kind of stuff, as well as the statements that she had made to other people previously, et cetera, et cetera. But there was nothing here that really would have been helped in her case by having her testify. So in that kind of a situation, it's 100% recommended that she not. I would not have expected for a single moment that she would testify in this trial, because like I said, it wouldn't have helped her. It wouldn't have helped her case, and it would have done more harm than good for her. There's just too many opportunities for her to end up agreeing to something that is against her interest, or maybe not even necessarily accurate. Like there are ways in which a witness on the stand can end up, making mistakes because they're just trying to be more agreeable than they should be. So anyhow, Shiro Kana says, I think I am too late to ask, but Legalbytes, is there a possibility the defense didn't go as hard after Colin because Kaitlin asked them not to? We actually got a question like this yesterday. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that was a trial strategy decision, which usually comes from the attorneys. I think they just couldn't really make up their mind as to what they wanted to do about Colin, because they wanted him to be the fall guy, but they didn't want to go that hard against him because, and I've thought about this, since yesterday, that I think that, if they had gone too hard on Colin and said, he's the guy that actually did it, there's enough there between the DNA, non-testing on the bicycle, and the fact that, he was with Mo while the car that was there at the time of the murder, the car that was there was driving around following them. He wasn't in that car. He was with Mo being followed by that car. And then there's the phone call basically like during the incident, and the jury heard from the guy that he was on the phone with, who was like, yeah, I knew he was in the garage because he was, he said that he was rummaging through stuff. If I remember correctly, he was asked if he could hear him rummaging through everything, or like rummaging through in his garage or anything like that. And he said he couldn't. So he kind of was relying a bit on Colin's statement, saying, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that, looking for bike parts in his garage. So that I think could have been an opening for the defense to be like, okay, Colin says he was home, but like, what else do we have showing that he actually was home? But there's still the forensic digital footprint, right? So I don't know. But if they had gone too hard on him and they said that is the theory that we're going with, those bits of evidence that kind of disprove that would have also been a very hard way for the jury to be like, this theory makes sense, this theory makes no sense. So it seems like the defense just decided to go with the theory of none of it makes sense. Like someone commented on one of on the closing arguments stream yesterday, was like, oh, good, the old Chewbacca defense. Yeah, basically that's what it was. And to be fair, it's a tough case. It's a really tough case. So, okay, let me see if there are any other questions that I may have missed. I think that's about it. So, okay, I'm going to keep track for when, when the jury might be back. I don't know. This might be, it might be 20 minutes. It might be 2 hours. I don't know. So keep an eye out for notifications and that kind of thing. Oh, a question about what is the Chewbacca defense? So there was a skit sketch, an episode of South Park where they talk about this. Chewbacca defense is basically where the defense kind of like points the jury at like random things to be like, this is completely irrelevant. Why am I talking about it? Because it doesn't make sense. Nothing in this case makes sense. And so basically it's a way of pointing people at things that don't matter and trying to make them look really relevant and really important for the jury to focus on, just to confuse them. Like that's basically what the Chewbacca defense is to be like, well, the DNA, Kaitlin's DNA was found on the bike seat and on the handlebars, but they didn't test the middle of the bike, which is where everybody picks up and holds a bicycle. Like never mind the fact that her DNA was found pretty definitively on these other parts of the bike. It doesn't matter that they didn't test this other part because they found it nonetheless. So yeah. Anyway, so that's basically it. So yeah, ND, it's using red herrings. It's using red herrings. It's using things or rabbit holes as the prosecution labeled them in closing arguments as well. It basically that's pretty much what the Chewbacca defense really is like talking about these other random things to be like, look at this, that doesn't make sense. Look at that doesn't make sense. All of these things don't make sense. So therefore nothing here makes sense. And therefore you should acquit. So, all right. Okay, guys, that is it for me for today. Thank you so much for joining me in the chat. Thank you to we had a members only live stream just before this, and we cut it off short so that we could stream this. So thank you to all the members who joined over here as well. Thanks folks for just jumping in at the last minute. This has been fantastic watching with you all. And I love the comments and the questions in the chat. I love the fact that people are bringing their diverse opinions and perspectives, and doing so in a way that's constructive. So we can all have a really, really interesting conversation about all this stuff. Yeah, keep an eye out for when the jury comes back with their decision on how long Kaitlin will be living in prison. We'll see. All right, guys. All right. So yes, other than that, I will see you guys in the next